had no intention of becoming a symphonist. The big symphonist for me, of course, was Shostakovich. What would you say to that, Dennis?
Well, he's one of the few that's in your category in terms of numbers composed. That's for sure. But you know, on this program, Philip, we've paired your second symphony with the Brahms second symphony.
Yeah.
And there were
which I never would have done.
yeah, but
so could you explain yourself, please?
yeah, it was very easy to do because both of you were, as composers, relatively far along before you even began composing.
Right. It wasn't clear at all that we were going to do.
Brahms was avoiding it because Beethoven was always hovering over him. And then he wrote his first symphony, which in many ways is a working out of his Beethoven problem. And with the second symphony, it was really the first symphony where Brahms relaxed and really did completely his own music. And your second symphony is also the first large-scale symphonic three-movement piece where you didn't use music or themes by David Bowie and Brian Eno, but this is your own original thoughts and music and reflections on tonality, bitonality. This is a very important step for you.
Well, what happened? It was premiered, wasn't it, at the Brooklyn Academy of Music? Is that right?
Right. Brooklyn Philharmonic.
Right, the Brooklyn Philharmonic, and Harvey Lichtenstein was the artistic leader, and we had told him we were doing this, and he accepted the idea. But what I didn't know was that he didn't actually think I was going to do it. And when he came to hear the piece, he didn't come to the rehearsals, as I remember. He came to hear the piece. He ran up to me and he gave me a huge bear hug. And he was a big guy anyway. He was very impressed with that piece, wasn't he?
There's something about Shostakovich too that is, and Philip, in addition to the fact that they have both written approximately the same number of symphonies, and that symphonic development, different kinds of symphonies, chamber, string symphonies, like Shostakovich's 14th Symphony with soloists, but also the fact that they both were involved as theater composers and film composers, and both wrote very seriously and loved writing that music and did it wonderfully. And they both have that ability and have that aspect in their music that this crossing over different kinds of music and different kinds of audiences is something that is a natural outgrowth of the way they composed.
Shostakovich was one of my father's favorite composers. He ran I had a little record shop in Baltimore, Maryland. His store, when he first opened it up, was mostly a repair shop for radios. And he accidentally began selling records to give people something to do. People were waiting for their radios and so forth. He began to sell them symphonies. And so he got involved in symphonies. And he was the one. And at first I said, no, Ben, no, the big symphonist is not, I said, it's not Shostakovich, it's Prokofiev. So we had that discussion. I lost that one too. Most of the discussions I had with my father, I lost the discussions because it was his store. He could do what he wanted to do. I was just the guy, one of the guys that was selling records. I had to step around huge personalities like Beethoven, and I was a little self-conscious about following in the steps of really, really wonderful composers, and I didn't want I didn't welcome the comparison. I didn't want people to compare my music to their music because I didn't think I was going to benefit by the comparison, so to speak. I avoided certain of the same things that they did. But oddly enough, I've ended up mimicking all of them in certain ways. I'm looking at the symphonies as, well, let's say there are opportunities, so to speak,
Yeah.
to write music for the most, let's say, splendid ensemble that Western music has come up with, which is a symphony orchestra. I mean, it's hard to get around that. The symphonies come into their own, unlike an opera can easily be overshadowed by the singers, but not a symphony.
Philip mentioned or said that he was mostly composing for the Philip Glass ensemble. But with the Second Symphony, there's no question that Philip is a composer who knows how the instruments sound, how they best sound, and how he wants to use them. And he's able to bring even exotic instruments like one of our personal favorites, him and myself, the contrabass clarinet, has a prominent part in the Second Symphony, which there's a color and a unique sound that really expands also the palette of the orchestra.
When I was at music school, you were at the same school as me, but I think you came after me a couple of years later. And there was no course in orchestration that was given by to the composers at Juilliard at that time. There were three rehearsals a week. Is that right? Something like that.
You're talking about Jean Morel and the Juilliard
Jean
Orchestra?
Morel, yeah. He was the conductor. And
Yeah.
I had to get his permission to come to the rehearsals, and he gave me the permission. And then after that, I would go to the classes also to see what he was teaching. What I would do, I would pick up the scores from the library, whatever they were playing, and I would follow the scores. And that usually meant 2 or 3 weeks of rehearsal with one piece. I probably learned more about orchestration from Morel than from anybody else. I never did anything in the class except follow what they were doing. But it was extremely important in terms of understanding when you said in the Second Symphony, the instruments actually play the way you expected to hear them. But I knew that because I knew the repertoire. Do you set the repertoire for the whole year yourself?
Yeah. Well, I have an excellent dramaturg in Brno, Vítězslav Mikeš, Vitek, who is actually this program, Brahms 2, Glass 2, was his idea. 2 composers, not young composers. Philip, you were, I think, in your mid to late 50s when you got around to do, and Brahms avoided writing a symphony. He simply couldn't bring himself to do it. His first piano concerto, which is a masterpiece, was originally started out as a symphony, but he couldn't bring himself to do it. He had Beethoven's Ghost in front of him all the time. And so I have, with number 2, Vitek's idea, and something that I completely subscribed to, was that these 2 composers, Brahms and Glass, with their Second Symphony, step forward with their own music in this big form.
Uh-huh.
So to me, it's a logical combination. And the fact that both Brahms and Glass at that time were not young composers, but were fully developed, successful composers in other areas, means beginning this new adventure in a symphonic form And that's why we put these pieces together. And I think they work very well.
How much time do you spend with the orchestra?
With the Filharmonie Brno,
Yeah.
well, I'm there good 4 or 5 months a season.
So you have a lot of time with them.
Yeah. And we have a lot of rehearsals too. We work hard.
I'm curious to know what they think of this music.
Philip, it's like everywhere in the world. Many of the musicians love it. Many of them don't understand it, but all of them do their best. That's all I ever ask.
Yeah.
There's when you ask a musician his opinion about any work from any period of time, they are so experienced. They've had so much experience playing so many pieces, and the pieces that they really like and they really are convinced of sometimes are very few. There's just great repertory from so many composers that some musicians like and some musicians don't like. But professional people always do their best, and that's what interests me.
Now, there's another angle to this too, which is that going to the kind of rehearsals that I did at Juilliard, I heard the symphonies of William Schumann, Peter Menon, Vincent Persichetti. I'm talking about composers who's probably not played that much these days, and probably the people that gave them the job didn't know the symphonies.
Well, it's one of the, for me, tragedies in American music right now, is that so few orchestras or the conductors that lead them know this music and bring it into the programs. It's being unfortunately lost and ignored. And I hope someday that'll change. The people who are going to listen to this concert or watch this concert or come to this concert because of Philip Glass are certainly going to enjoy the Brahms before they get to what they really want to hear. And on the other hand, the people who are experiencing Glass for the first time will have had the pleasure of hearing Brahms and understanding that we take also this Brahms music extremely seriously and are the kinds of musicians who can do a beautiful performance. It then leads them to have confidence in the music that they don't know, but are hearing for the first time.
Well, I came close to never writing symphonic music. If I hadn't met you, I probably wouldn't have done that. I would have continued in the kind of experimental ensemble that I had.